Hey everyone, welcome back to Tiny Glade. In the last video I asked if you all wanted to see more builds and the answer was a big yes. So here we are again with another fun project. Today we're diving into a medieval fantasy marketplace build. I'm super excited to show what I've got planned, and as usual this build will have a whimsical twist. I've been thinking about a lot of potential features in Tiny Glade. Imagine having thatch roofs, canopies or awnings to really bring this marketplace to life that I'm building today. It would be such a game changer, especially for adding extra detail to these market stalls. I'm also a huge fan of clutter in my builds, and if you watch my Planet Coaster and Planet Zoo stuff, you know I love clutter. That's one thing I really love here, the ability to place individual clutter pieces to create that lived-in feel. Today's build is a little different because I'm also focusing on how we can elevate our designs even more. I'll be experimenting with new ways to add detail and share some tips along the way. Oh, and good news. I'm working on a tutorial video for you all where I explain my building methods and ethics in more depth. But for now, let's jump into the medieval fantasy market. So for today's build, we're focusing on creating this immersive marketplace that feels authentic and detailed. You can see that I've already added some support beams underneath the main structure to give the building that extra layer of realism. It takes a bit more time, but honestly, the payoff is so worth it. These little details like beams and supports help ground the build and make it feel like it could actually exist in a real medieval setting. I'm still exploring more ways to elevate my builds. I'll be continuing to add more buildings to this marketplace. And my plan is to eventually turn it into a small town or city with a whimsical but realistic vibe. I want to mix elements of fantasy and realism to create something unique. If you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see in this city, make sure to drop them in the comments below. So if we go back to what I'm doing here on the screen, as you can see I did a little foundation and colored it with some rocks. And afterwards I'm just trying to add more supports. As you can see, I'm adding an extra building underneath a building to get these poles, these support poles coming out. And it literally gives so much extra touch to this whole build. And something I also found very fun is if you use the normal wall as a wall and you put windows in it, they kind of feel like they're broken and a little bit like destroyed. And that is also very nice to have this sort of vibe and feeling into a medieval fantasy build, that not all the windows are exactly the same and some is broken and some is a little bit derelict, and everything is just kind of like doing its own thing on this build. And that's what I really appreciate about mixing fantasy and medieval together. So as you can see here, we got the foundation, we got some support beams, and now we are kind of like expanding a little bit to this build here. I added some windows on the top, and now I'm just adding some more walls underneath again, and just kind of trying to mix and match everything nicely together. And I feel like when everything has come together nicely with this first build, it really stands out a lot, and it's awesome that you can have this sort of feeling when you're building in Tiny Glade. So I really appreciate how this game works and how easy things are to make. If you get an idea quick, you can try it. If it doesn't work, so be it. You use like 2 minutes, and if it works, then it's like, okay, awesome, let's move on to something else. And you can see I keep on adding different levels to the support beams because it just adds that more authentic and realistic touch to a building. And it really does if you do that, and adding more of these windows on the top and changing the color to black so it kind of stands out a little bit more and doesn't blend in with the colors to the walls. And it's very important to do that you mix up some color schemes so you can really get some things to pop more out. And saying that, I'm going towards the roof again, where you can see I'm doing the same thing of adding some darker colors to these extensions so they give a little bit more of a better vibe instead of just having the same colors everywhere. And it really adds to the depth as well, and just the whole color scheme and how it attracts your eye in that way. And it's just super fun to do that. As you can see here, just doing some more detailing, adding some windows. So right next to this build here, I'm adding another building next to the marketplace. This one is a bit smaller, almost like a stable or maybe a storage house. It could even be someone's home. When I'm building, I'm always thinking about composition, how everything fits together in a bigger picture. That's how you get those awesome cityscapes with skylines that has variety and charm. I love when you look at a build from a distance and everything just flows. It's like, it's all about those skyline moments where the buildings create this beautiful, cohesive scene, you know? This smaller structure I'm adding today is all about filling in that composition. It adds layers, making the marketplace look more complete and authentic. I know you can't really see the marketplace at this moment, but we will get to that later on in the video. But even though it's not a massive build, it gets tons of detailing. Again, I'm adding support beams, some bonding for a bit of color, and of course, another chimney. It really helps bring everything together and adds that rustic medieval vibe I'm going for. Every detail, no matter how small, helps to build out the story of the place. As mentioned, the building itself could function as a storage unit or maybe a little cottage. It's all about using your imagination, which is what makes these fantasy builds so much fun. There are no rules. The only limit is how creative you can get, and that's one of the things I love about Tiny Glade. The freedom to build whatever you want. The game really rewards creativity and experimentation. And after playing it more, I've started to uncover so many little hidden features, whether it's the way pieces snap together or the subtle details you can add. There's always something new to discover, I feel like. Each time I sit down to build, I learn something new, and it's exciting to see how much you can do with it. And this is also exactly a great example on what we're doing in today's video. I'm still not 100% sure I've discovered everything yet, but that's the part of the fun. There's always more to learn, and as the game develops, I'm sure we'll even get more tools to play with. I really hope we are, because right now I'm just enjoying the process of building and experimenting, seeing what works and what doesn't. This building, like I mentioned earlier, has a lot of potential. It's smaller than the other structures that we're building, but it plays an important role in the overall layout of the marketplace. I'm also gonna eventually add a tower back and on the left side of these builds to give it that more better composition of a little bit of a taller height to this build. By adding details like the chimney, support beams and bonding, it adds a lot of characters to the area. It feels lived in. It might be simple, but it's effective in making the space feel more alive. I'm already thinking ahead of the next phase of the marketplace. There's always more to add, more details to refine, and of course, a lot more ideas to explore. So now when we kind of got the building sort of finished, I am adding the detail to make this building pop a little bit more up. So we're adding some extension windows to the roof. We're obviously adding bonding, as I mentioned. And then afterwards, we're kind of like just going with the flow and just adding where I feel like we need to add more things. So I'm adding some lanterns, and I was hoping some clutter pieces would appear when I click these guys in, but they weren't really helping me a lot in this build. So, but let's move over to the more whimsical part of this build. I'm currently adding a cross bridge that connects one building to another. This is one of my favorite parts of the build because it really ties everything together nicely. The bridge adds a majestic elevated look, and it's a great way to mix up the architecture in this marketplace. On one side, I'm keeping things a little more traditional with that medieval authenticity. But on the other side, I'm going more fantasy style with some creative flair. And that's the beauty when you combine fantasy and medieval. They complement each other so well. And as you can see, as we're doing here, on the left side, as I said, we have a little bit more normal medieval kind of vibe. And then on the right side here, we're going a little bit more fantasy-esque. And that's what I really like, that you can combine these two elements together. So what we're doing here is that I'm making the bridge, like the crossover bridge, just gonna go over to the other building. I'm adding some bonding, and then eventually I'm playing around with the walls here, as you can see, to do a little archways. And I do that on both sides of this, so it really feels like it's more of a thick wall that you are going through. After that, we're kind of going back towards the other build. I know you can see here that the building on the side here is kind of bare and doesn't have a lot of stuff, but we will go back to that in another video. My main concern was just to get the first part done where you're looking. So whatever we're going to add towards it next time will be added, like walls, windows, doors, etc. And also, if we are extending this, we can always just add when we go and build on the back side of this building here. But as I told you guys in the video, I am adding some towers, some more depth, some more composition, and I feel like having a little peak here in the middle of both here kind of like added a lot to the composition. But then I was like, I need something else that can balance this nice cityscape, this nice view. So I feel like having a tower next to this little storage room could really do wonders and really work its way around. And after we kind of added this, I feel like this build really became more majestic, more medieval. Like towers do so many things. I feel like towers do as much that foliage can do. Like if you add foliage to a build, it really almost all of a sudden just pops up and it becomes way more beautiful to look at. And I feel like the same happened here when we do this with towers and etc. And it just works its way around here. Honestly, I love it. On one side here, I'm keeping things a little more traditional with the medieval authenticity. But on the other side, I'm going more fantasy style with some creative flair. That's the beauty of combining fantasy and medieval. I think they complement each other so well. And honestly, if you're into either theme, I think it's essential to mix both. You can't really have a medieval vibe without adding a bit of fantasy, magic, and vice versa, I feel like. This bridge will act as a kind of transition point between the two styles, making it a focal point in the market. The left side stays true to a more grounded medieval aesthetic, and the right side lets me play around with more imaginative, whimsical designs. It's kind of like, it's all about balance, and I think it'll look fantastic once it's all finished. And specifically with this build is that it's going to be a little bit like what you say, like blobby. Like it's a little bit of a thick structure, like a thick foundation footprint that this build will have, but it's kind of like in the making of being whimsical and fantastic at the same time. Like I'm really trying to add all the detailing I can do around this build, and also adding some more trim pieces, as you can see, all the way around, and a little bit of windows and detailing. And then afterwards, I wanted to make like a little on the roof of many Victorian buildings, for example. This is obviously a different style of architecture, but you have a lot of you have like a little patio on the top of your roof where you have some fencing and stuff. And I was like, how can I make this look like it belongs there? How can I make it look like it's there? So as you can see here, I was trying to make building and then just make it feel like, so it has like this sort of railing around the roof, and it really adds towards the roof, honestly. And I love the addition here. It really adds to the depth and how I wanted the build to look, so it doesn't look super bubbly, as I say, you know, like and it really adds to the masses here, and I love it. And I'm really going crazy with detailing and supports here, because I wanted it to feel like rustic. I wanted it to feel very structural with having a lot of these beams and supports going into the build. And it really works. And this was really fun to do, because I'm always very, with the way I build, I'm always like, it has to be plausible, right? And I feel like doing this with this build kind of did it, compared to having the first one we did on the left side here, that is way more rustic and way more authentic and realistic. But here I felt like, why if I just make this like a little apartment kind of block and add all these roof and all that stuff to it to give it that really nice feeling. And I feel like with a little bit of effort that I did here, that we kind of got pretty good. And adding some chimneys here, because why not? It really adds to the aesthetic as well, and also to the whole vibe of the build. The snap part wouldn't really allow me to click it there, so I had to have it there. And then I'm just doing some custom walls here, or bricks as you can say, with the wall, and it really adds to the beauty of this guy here. So as you can see, I added a little bit of trim work as well. Now for this part of the build, I'm having a little fun with windows. Since this is a fantasy build, I'm going a bit over the top with it. I'm adding lots of windows to the buildings to give them character. The cool thing about fantasy builds is that you can really push boundaries and make things whimsical, even if they seem impractical by real-world standards. As long as you can make it look intentional, you're pretty good. I've also been playing around with different colors, and using color can really change the whole feel of a build. I want the windows to stand out more, so I give them this black color at the back of the windows to the build, so we can get this little bit more contrast. And it also looks super nice with the wooden tones of the buildings. It gives this whole marketplace a lively, magical vibe, which is what I'm going for. That's another tip I can recommend you guys too, is that don't be afraid to experiment with colors and textures, especially in fantasy builds. It's all about creating something visually engaging that draws the eye to it. And that's pretty much what we are doing at the end of this build here. Pretty much like we got the kind of like bubbliness is kind of gone now, because we've added all these extension windows, we've added chimneys, and we've kind of like tried to make it look very whimsical. And I love the aesthetic. I love how these two builds are fully combined with each other now, with the cross bridge and everything. And I'm just kind of like just adding the last bits to the part here of what we're missing. As you can see, some windows might appear and stuff. I just cut out a little bit of things that you don't need to see me placing 1,000 windows. So we're just kind of keeping it plain. And as you can see here, we're almost done with the build here. At this point, I was like, I want to add another little thing that cross over the path here, but I don't want to do anything else to it. I just wanted it to be like a finished section here that you can kind of go underneath, and it just adds a lot more to the composition as well, and the depth. So we're just adding some lamppost here, and then some fencing, and then we're pretty much just going all the way around. And I was trying to make a well here, and it didn't work as I wanted to, but I think it's okay, like having a little bit of rustic runes around it, and just a little bit of a wooden pole in between there, and then just call it a day, more or less. Right now, I'm working on adding some market stalls, and this is where I would absolutely love to have canopies or awnings in the game. These stalls are the heart of any good market, and they need to feel busy and alive. Since we don't have individual clutter pieces yet, I'm improvising by using the available building tools to add detail, but hey, we get those in future updates, hopefully. So after adding a few market stalls, I feel like we kind of have the front of the marketplace now, and these stalls will be the first thing you'll see when you enter the market through these arches. So they need to feel welcoming and full of activity. Unfortunately, I couldn't add that much clutter as I wanted to, so it's pretty much just clear. I did try to use the fence and just make it like a little, so it's kind of like in a table kind of a measurement, and I feel like it kind of works well like that. But with the market mostly done for now, I will be continuing this project in future episodes. I'm planning to add more buildings and expand the marketplace into a fully fledged city. And if you have any ideas for what you'd like to see, let me know in the comments, friends. And that's all for today. I'm about to give you a few cinematic shots of the build so you can see it all in its full glory. Thank you so much for watching once again, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you want to see more Tiny Glade content. And if you're looking for a community of creative builders, you can join my Discord. Take care everyone, have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.